There is little doubt why Persona 4 has become one of the most popular titles in the Persona franchise. Focusing on introspective psychological elements creates themes that most people can relate to. All of us have faults that we would rather ignore, but true growth of character and self-actualization can only happen if we admit to these flaws and take steps to address them. The dungeons in Persona 4 are literal personal hells where a character's darkest secrets are laid bare. Just like the cast, many of us would prefer death rather than face these truths about ourselves. A brilliant idea of the designers is when the shadows of the main cast become their personas, they still retain elements of how they look like when they were enemies, symbolizing how the character has come to accept their flaws and insecurities as part of them. It really emphasizes how shadows and personas are two sides of the same coin. In this video, we take a look at the design of the boss forms of the shadows. We try to find how design elements are used to symbolize the characters they are representing. When it comes to Persona, needless to say, there will be spoilers in this video. There is one thing that links all the shadow versions together: the yellow eyes. Yellow is the dominant color motif in Persona 4. Yellow can be attributed to happiness. Persona 4 is more upbeat than the usual Shin Megami Tensei title. There is a lot of humor and moments of levity. While the stakes are very real, it is paced in between more mundane activities that show the characters just living their lives and having fun. When the bad times come, you can really feel the weight and gravity of the situation because you had a clear idea of what the good times were. But the color yellow is used in duality. Yellow can also be the color of sickness and malaise. We see that there are many instances where disease and sickness is used in the game. Characters feel ill when they stay in the TV world for too long. They are also exhausted when they obtain their personas. Multiple major characters get hospitalized. The shadows of the main characters show the worst parts of them. In a way, they are spilling out their guts, vomiting the things they are keeping inside. With that, let's take a look at each of the shadow version's boss forms.
For I am a shadow, and I am the true self, and I'm you, you're me, amuse me, amuse me, amuse me.
Yosuke's conflict was the boredom that he felt in his new provincial home. The main figure is flailing around, symbolizing his helplessness in his situation. Yosuke can't leave Inaba because his father's work is there. The giant frog the shadow is riding on could represent his provincial home, and how Yosuke is in the middle of the boonies. The frog has a large smile, symbolizing the fake smile that Yosuke is always showing. The frog also has a camo print for its skin, which could show how he blends into the background. No one notices Yosuke, even if he is in pain. The persona is also wearing a red scarf, which carries over when it becomes Jiraiya. The red scarf is reminiscent of something that heroes wear, symbolizing Yosuke wanting to be a hero. Initially, this is an extension of his boredom, as Yosuke tries to find some adventure and excitement in his life. Maybe he could even be considered a hero if his adventures in the TV world works out. Later on though, his desire to save other people becomes more genuine. Another element that carries over is the large smile, which is now situated at the persona's chest. This could symbolize Yosuke finding genuine happiness in his town because of his friends and his new mission.
For I am the shadow, and I am the true self, and I'm you, and you're me. Submit to me, submit to me, submit to me.
Chie's conflict is how much he wanted to control Yukiko. Specifically, how much he thrives on Yukiko's low self-esteem. This is represented by how her shadow looks like a dominatrix. The shadow is standing on top of several students, raising her up. This could symbolize how much of Chie's confidence is predicated on Yukiko. There is also a smile on top of the hood. Similar to Yosuke, it could show Chie's ulterior motives behind her fake smile. Another prominent feature is the long black hair that covers the shadow. This could represent Chie's envy of Yukiko. She wishes she had her femininity and beauty, a fact that she keeps very well hidden. But since she is friends with Yukiko, the boys have to notice her too. The shadow also has a prominent yellow motif, one that carries over when the shadow becomes Tomoe. It actually represents Chie's love of martial arts. The yellow on Tomoe is actually Bruce Lee's signature jumpsuit. In a way, it represents Chie's desire of protecting the people important to her. But on the shadow, it becomes corrupted and turns into Chie's desire for people to become reliant on her. The persona also retains the long black hair, though it is no longer as long. This, along with the lipstick on the helmet, are symbolic of Chie's repressed femininity. It could show that Chie is slowly moving past her envy of Yukiko and becoming more comfortable with her own looks.
For I am a shadow, and I am the true self, and I'll rescue you, and you're
Just wait for me.
save me.
I'll save you.
Yukiko's conflict is with her own helplessness. Yukiko doesn't like how everything has been decided for her, but knows that she doesn't have the strength to leave. Yukiko's shadow is portrayed as a princess because she believes the only way out of her situation is if someone can save her. The shadow takes the form of a bird in a cage, representing how Yukiko views her own life. She is admired by everyone for her beauty and for running her family's inn, which is the only tourist spot in town. However, she herself has very little freedom. The shadow is on top of a chandelier, connected to the princess imagery of her dungeon. A chandelier is often tied with grand balls or dances. It is where a princess can meet her prince. Shadow Yukiko can repeatedly summon a prince to help her fight, symbolizing how she doesn't care who the prince is as long as the prince can take her far away from her life. She even considers Chie a possible candidate, sparking a whole bunch of queer readings. Yukiko is the only character who has a symbolic connection to her element of fire. Since she hates her name, seeing snow as something temporary, Yukiko gravitates to its opposite, fire. As such, you can see fire as a theme in her designs, from the chandelier to the bird looking like a phoenix. Yukiko's shadow also has a large heart pattern on her chest, which she retains when she becomes Konohana Sakuya. Shadow Yukiko is puffing out her chest, which could represent her trying to find someone to help her escape. She is practically giving it to anyone. Some species of birds are known to puff up their chests when they are trying to attract a mate. Of course, it is usually the males who do this, but this could connect with Yukiko trying to find a hot stud. When Yukiko joins the investigation team, she seems to let down her guard more. Chie noted that Yukiko would only go into her laughing fits when she was the only one around, but she seems to do it more often with the investigation team. The heart on Konohana Sakuya's chest could symbolize how Yukiko is more willing to show her true self to others now.
For I'm a shadow,
He's a shadow.
and I am the true,
He's the true
self, and
self.
I'm you,
He's you,
and you're me.
You're him, and
Accept me, baby, please.
Kanji's conflict is his desire to be accepted. This can be interpreted in different ways. It could be Kanji coming to terms with his sexuality. It could be his confusion over gender roles. His shadow is wielding giant nail symbols as weapons, showing how Kanji overcompensates his masculinity because of his traditionally feminine interests like sewing. The nice guy and tough guy enemies reinforce Kanji's idea of manliness. Ironic since they can also be stereotypes of campy gay men, something that the anime exploits to great comedic effect. However, having them as separate entities while possessing a mirror image design shows how Kanji struggles with resolving different aspects of his personality. Kanji is a naturally nice guy, but this trait does not seem manly, hence he has a tough guy act. This confusion over what it means to be manly might be the reason why these traits are separated from the main body. Shadow Kanji is in the middle of a bouquet of flowers, representing Kanji's desire to be accepted. You give a bouquet of flowers to someone in hopes that he or she will accept it, acknowledge your feelings, and return it. The rose motif might be a reference to the term bara, a subset of yaoi culture. Yaoi or boys' love is manga that portrays romantic and sometimes sexual love between two males, but it is usually written by women and targeted towards other women. Bara, or men's love, is a subculture of this genre where the target audience is actual gay men. The name comes from Barazoku, or Rose Tribe, Japan's first male gay magazine. When the shadow becomes Takemikazuchi, it retains the hyper-masculine form and holding something large and golden as a weapon. The weapon has changed from a male symbol to a lightning bolt, perhaps showing that Kanji no longer feels the need to constantly assert his masculinity. The persona still has an exaggerated masculine form, but it emphasizes a skeleton as opposed to the muscles. This could show that Kanji no longer seeks what it means to be a man by getting into fights and acting like a punk, but rather seeks it by learning to be comfortable with himself instead.
Me, 'cause I am a shadow, and I am the true self, and I'm you, and you're me, so look at me.
Look at her.
Rise's conflict is her confusion with her identity. The stripper motif of the persona in the dungeon shows Rise's desire to discard all the personalities and characters she was forced to adopt due to her work as an idol. Rise has a desire to discover who she really is. The Technicolor flesh on Rise's figure shows how people paint her in any way they want. Whether it is with costumes or rumors, people have already formed an idea of who she is without actually meeting her. Rise resents how people tend to think of her as an airhead and a bimbo, and this is symbolized by the cartoonishly long nails that the shadow has. The trait that the shadow possesses that carries over when it becomes the persona Himiko is the satellite dish head. As a shadow, this represents Rise's desire to show everyone just who she is. But just as a satellite dish is capable of transmitting signals, it can receive them as well. As a persona, the satellite head is Rise acknowledging that Reset and all her other personas are part of her and were all born from her. Rise has come to accept that there is no true Rise, but rather that Rise, Reset, and all her other personas are all the true Rise.
For I am a shadow, the truest face of all, and the time has now come for you humans to fall. So fight with me. Fight.
Teddie's conflict is with his identity. We see Teddie struggle with his origins and possibly having no reason for existence. Teddie adopts the form of a mascot in order to appear less threatening to humans. Shadow Teddie completely subverts his efforts by turning the friendly appearance into a nightmarish decaying creature with threatening claws. This could symbolize how Teddie is a greater danger than what he is portraying. The large crack on the face of the shadow represents Teddie's fears about his origins, that he may actually be hollow on the inside. Shadow Teddie is also crawling out of a hole in the ground, a subtle hint at Teddie's true origins. Apart from the color scheme and rotund design, there isn't really a major design element from the Shadow Boss form that carries over to the Persona form. The greater connection is between Shadow Teddie and Amino Sagiri, with the eye that looks almost like a camera lens. This is actually a hint that Shadow Teddie was an early manifestation of the god, as it speaks in the same manner as Shadow Teddie. But if you want to get creative, the Shadow and Persona forms do share the motif of emptiness. For Shadow Teddie, he is crawling out of a hole, symbolizing the futility of Teddie and everyone's actions. Despite their hard work, they will inevitably turn into nothingness. It is an empty space that consumes. But when Shadow Teddie becomes Kintoki Doji, the empty space is turned into a vault or a boiler, which comprises most of its body. This is a symbol for when Teddie finally accepts the uncertainty of what he is later on in the game. He might not have a purpose, but he can make protecting the TV world and the investigation team his purpose. It is an empty space that protects.
For I am a shadow, and I am the true self, and I'm you, and you're me. So fix me, fix me.
Naoto's conflict is with her discontent. She struggles with her gender identity, her age, how society perceives her, and how society works in general. The robotic theme of her shadow's design is a symbol of her childish nature. The shadow, with its wings and ray guns, looks like an action figure. This could also be a reference on how she is praised for being a detective prince, but when the work is done, she is treated as a child again, returned to the toy box. The split design of the shadow shows Naoto's obsession with gender roles. In her attempts to be taken seriously, she adopts very masculine traits. It could also be a symbol of how she tries to reconcile with society's two-faced nature by being two-faced herself. Naoto's shadow is the smallest of all the shadow bosses, a symbol of her resentment on how she is not taken seriously. When Shadow Naoto becomes Sukuna Hikona, it carries over the robotic design and the formal outfit that almost looks like a uniform. As a shadow, it could represent Naoto's desire to be taken seriously despite being young. The design of the shadow could be an allusion to the character Astro Boy. Despite having a child's body and attending school, Astro still goes out and saves the day. As a persona, the uniform and small form could be Naoto admitting that her young age also indicates how much she still has to learn. Mitsuo's conflict is with his delusions of grandeur, extreme need for attention, and his desire for death. To cope with his social isolation, immaturity, and emptiness of his life, Mitsuo brags about his skill in video games, giving him an artificial sense of self-worth. The large pixelated hero that covers his shadow's true form is symbolic of Mitsuo's inability to face the world, so he hides behind video games. The exaggerated size of the hero represents his desire for attention and to make an impact on the world, good or bad. The shadow's true form is an embryo, symbolizing his fragility, emotional immaturity, and lashing out for attention. What is interesting about Mitsuo's shadow is that it does not antagonize him, which causes confusion for the investigation team as they are unsure which one is the real Mitsuo. Then again, given that Mitsuo has been ignored by people for most of his life, ignoring him even after he has admitted to being the killer might have been the best way to antagonize the egotistic Mitsuo. But Mitsuo does not reconcile with his shadow either, it just fades away after he admits to being the killer. A possible interpretation of this is that while Mitsuo does not accept his shadow, his ego has become so corrupted that he has become indistinguishable from his shadow. Mitsuo has become his own shadow as he spirals further into his own lies and self-loathing. Thanks for watching. I got a lot of requests to do the personas of the P4 cast. Unfortunately, they are referencing very obscure figures in Japanese folklore. There isn't much written on them in English, so I think I will explore something else. Maybe do something on Persona Q since the sequel was announced recently. Don't forget to leave a comment. I do enjoy reading your interpretations and it makes each video an interesting coffee table or barside discussion. Until our paths cross again, see you, investigation team.